6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Here we go. 24 NHL teams have arrived in the hub cities of Edmonton and Toronto. And if you can believe it, Anna, we are only a few short nights away from meaningful hockey games finally being played for the first time in almost 5 months. Matt Lee and Anna Forsyth with you here on the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. And we are setting the stage for Canucks playoff hockey with an asterisk-ish for the first time in 5 years. Anna, is the excitement palpable right now for you? Is it feeling real?
Yeah, the excitement's there for sure. But almost every time I hear a Canucks player saying, I'm excited to get going for the playoffs, I want to say, you aren't there yet. So settle down a little bit, but
I mean, we can talk about this later on, but I don't know. It does still feel like playoffs. Like, they're there with all the other teams. It still feels like playoffs to me. So I'm calling it playoffs for all intents and purposes in my mind.
okay.
Well, Anna, I guess if you asked anyone back in September of last year, which is somehow almost a year ago now, I don't think anyone would have guessed that the NHL postseason would have looked and been like this. Here we are on the hottest day of the year here in Vancouver, and we're previewing the Canucks playoff play-in series against the Minnesota Wild in the beginning of August, if you could believe it. But of course, brushing aside the very serious nature of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, I think we've arrived to the point where we are 99% of the way there towards the NHL's return to play plan finally coming to fruition. I know you and I talked about this on previous episodes about our reservations of this actually working out, this plan working out, but you know, you've seen the tests and the results, and it sounds like we're like just on the precipice of a green light for actual hockey. So for you, as we sort of get towards playoff hockey, where have you sort of stood on the all of this going off without a quote unquote hitch?
Yeah, I've been the first one to say that I had some reservations about it, for sure. But as it gets nearer to, it really seems like the NHL has planned it pretty well. And seeing how they've managed it in Europe with football and cricket, like they've done a very good job there. But it seems like the rest of the North American sports leagues really haven't. And the NHL has stood out in that regard. So at least amongst the men's leagues, I believe the NWSL has done pretty well as well. But yeah, the scale that the NHL are dealing with, and obviously hasn't actually started yet, but so far so good. I've been impressed, I have to say.
Definitely. And to tie up the loose ends of Canucks training camp and to set the stage for the club's play-in series against the Minnesota Wild, today, we are happy to be joined by our returning guest, Chris Faber of Canucks Army and the Canucks Conversation podcast. He is going to join us very shortly to break down everything we saw towards the end of camp, maybe a couple of things that we didn't see in camp that he saw in person. Also going to give us his thoughts on what Game 1's lineup is going to be against those Minnesota Wild, and some of the biggest storylines, of course, heading into that plan as the playoff picture for the Vancouver Canucks becomes clear. So let's get hooked up right now with Chris Faber. Coming up next here, C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. So we're pleased to be joined right now by former standout at the Ladysmith Sawmill and current writer at Canucks Army and one half of the dynamic Canucks Conversation podcast. He's currently the pride of White Rock, British Columbia, Chris Faber. Chris, how are you doing?
Doing good. The youngest national board member on the PPWC as well. You can throw that in there. Now that I've quit my job, I can flex a little bit about my mill strategies.
Oh, man.
Very impressive.
It's good to have on the resume, baby.
It was. I was also the only guy who knew what Twitter was, so I was a Sherlock for the social media position that they created at the time.
Was the beard like mandatory at the sawmill? I have to ask. Like you look like a guy who used to work at a sawmill.
Yeah, most definitely. When I got hired at that sawmill, I guess 6 years ago, they asked me if I would shave it because I guess some of the jobs you need a have the seals on for, I guess, painting and stuff like that for the breathing apparatus. And I told him I wouldn't shave my beard. So I never ended up working in that stupid paint shack. So I guess I just kept the beard and they hired me because of that.
Well, Chris, I guess from all of us here at C4 Podcast, a hearty congratulations to you for, again, like you mentioned, leaving your job at the Ladysmith Sawmill and taking this monumental step in your professional career. We know it's the first step of many steps for you. We're very proud to see how far you've come so far. And again, I think we've mentioned this the first time we had you on. We're really excited to see where you're going. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say you were actually one of the big training camp standouts yourself on those Zoom calls, asking some really great questions, even some very colorful questions, which we'll get into a little bit later as well. So we're really proud of how far you've come, and we're really excited to see where you continue to go in the months and years ahead.
Well, thanks, guys. You guys got me through a lot of 12-hour shifts at the mill listening to C4 back in the day. You guys know I've been listening for a long time. I used to be pretty active in the Discord chat as well. And I know you had PJ on last week, and he's a good friend of the show. Am I at that level yet, or am I still just a friend?
Well, I think now that you've made the second appearance, you're definitely elevating yourselves. I mean, it's going to be like a world heavyweight championship battle for which one of you is going to be the best friend of the show. I think one day it's going to be a ladder match between you and PJ or something. Anyway, as we sort of connect here with Chris, Anna, I think maybe you wanted to ask Chris some of the questions about training camp as we sort of get up to speed with him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, must have been a really cool experience for you to be there and see just some of the action in person. Okay, so let's go right off the bat as we did with PJ. One of the big stories from camp was the Jake storyline, and it seems like it's always a saga, it's always a thing with him. What's your take on that? And do you think he's kind of played himself out of a roster spot?
Yeah, for a long time there, and especially before Michael Furlan kind of looked healthy, I really thought this might just be one of Travis Green's ways of getting Jake going. I mean, it's something that we've seen him do in the past a little bit. So, there was times where Jake definitely didn't look like he was competing as hard as a guy like Zach McEwen or Michael Furlan was. And, you just got to wonder if maybe Jake had it in his mind that he was going to be on that third line for sure. I mean, that was kind of his spot all year long. Michael Furlan and Zach McEwen didn't score 18 goals for the Canucks this year. Jake has a little bit in his back pocket there. Maybe he didn't want to try as hard, which is unfortunate because he seems like he's kind of lost his job right now. And there was times where you were kind of let down for the effort level from Jake, but there was also times where he was put in a pretty tough situation, being thrown on in a line with two black aces or not getting power play opportunities. And, seeing a guy like Antoine Roussel be trotted out there to play on the power play over Jake Virtanen, that confuses the hell out of me because I think Jake Virtanen's a much better power play player. So there was a little bit of both, right? I mean, some of it was on Jake, but some of it just felt to me like it was Travis Green kind of having his way with Jake and saying hey, I'm going to need you to bring it. And if you're not going to bring it, I'm going to keep putting you into these bad situations.
Has it constantly been a bit of a tough love situation between Travis Green and Jake Virtanen? I think all of us can agree. Jake Virtanen has always had the tools needed to succeed as an NHL player. You can't teach the size, you can't teach the speed, you can't teach the skill that Jake brings to the table. But I think maybe there has always been a little something left to be desired in Jake's game. And Travis Green has constantly been pushing Jake Virtanen to be that player. Has it been a little bit of that tough love from Travis Green, which is also at play here?
Yeah, I think it would a little bit as well. And sorry, I got a motorcycle driving in my driveway right now. If you can hear that in the background, I apologize. But yeah, I think that, the way someone asked me this the other day, is Jake Virtanen a Travis Green type of player? And I think that Travis Green's trying to make him into that so much. And that is a loud motorcycle. But I think that what you're seeing from Jake Virtanen is a guy who came out of junior with so many raw skills and tried to kind of lean on that as he moved forward into his NHL career. And that's just not the type of player that Travis Green wants on his roster. So he's going to try and make adjustments with Jake's game. And I think that he's playing a lot of mind games with Jake because I think that's the way that Travis Green likes to coach. And I think that's the way that he's going to continue with Jake Virtanen.
Anna, do you want to take this next one?
Yeah, I just wanted to keep going on that Jake thing briefly. Do you think it works? We've seen Jake had 2 very difficult training camps in one season. So obviously he scored 18 goals this season. He had a decent time, but yeah, I'm just wondering if you think it will ever come to fruition what Travis wants to see in Jake.
Yeah, it's hard to get a read on a player at training camp, right? I mean, Zach McEwen looked excellent. Juolevi looked excellent. Are those two of the guys that I would staple 100% into your lineup just because they had great training camps? Probably not, but you're going to look at the way that Travis Green looks at this lineup and the way that he looked at these players competing. And I think, Coach Green likes to look at what these players are going to compete for him like, and kind of moving into the playoffs here. This is a situation that we don't really know what's going to come of it, right? So I think that you want to have him running on all cylinders. And I seriously just keep going back to that point. I think this is a mind game that Travis Green's working with them. Do I think it'll work? I don't know. I think that right now it's hard to say that it will work because the way that it's looking, I don't know if Jake's going to even be on that opening night roster. And I think that he's a skilled enough NHL player that he probably should be. But this Canucks team has a lot of different situations now to choose from with their wingers. I don't think he gets a shot on that fourth line because right now the way that this team's structured, that fourth line needs to – all three of those players need to be able to kill penalties. So right now the winger spots, it's kind of like, is it Antoine Roussel and Michael Ferland? Those seem to be the guys that are locked in on that third line. And it's crazy to look at the season that Jake had and now look at the playoffs and say, wow, he's not going to be on that opening night game.
So I think we'll talk about game one lineups a little bit later in this segment, Chris, but maybe let's talk about this. Are we going to see Jake Virtanen at some point in this Minnesota play-in?
I think there's a couple different ways that we can see him. I think that right now I don't see him hopping into that fourth line. I don't see him hopping into the top six. If Antoine Roussel seems to not really play a great game in game 1 and 2, I think that you have the option to move Michael Ferland to the left side on that third line and slide Jake right in there. But then you also have to look was Zach McEwen's great camp enough for him to win the role over Jake? Is Jake not even the 13th forward? He might be the 14th, right, with Zach McEwen in the camp that he had. So it's hard to say. If I was a betting man, I would actually probably say that we won't see Jake Virtanen. I think the Canucks sweep the Wild in 3 games. I think that they're much better than a lot of people think coming in here. I'm happy to double down on the tweet that I sent out a few days ago. I think that, this top 6 that the Canucks have is going to run right through this Minnesota Wild team. It's better than we haven't seen this top 6 at all this year. I think aside from the one game when Brock Besser was back there, the final game of the year, I think when you see what this top 6 is actually going to look like together, it's going to be better than a lot of people think. And I don't think that he's going to be forced to move Jake Virtanen into the lineup because I think Michael Ferland's going to make a huge impact if he's able to stay healthy. But that's the other option for Jake to get in. We haven't seen Ferland play an NHL game. He looks great in scrimmage. He looks great in practice, but that is very far away from what the speed of playoff hockey is. And that's something that Ferland talked about was it's not about the physical contact. He's fine with that. There was a play in training camp where he was going in on a rush and went sliding right into the boards. I believe I tweeted it out, and it looked like he went in pretty hard, and it was like, okay, this is when you start to worry about him. But that's not the thing that he's worried about. He's worried about processing the game around him. It's something that Sven Baertschi talked about a lot. It's just the fast-paced play going around him and making your eyes be able to adjust to the play, right? I mean, that's a scary thing for Ferland, and he hasn't proved yet that he can do that. I think this exhibition game against the Winnipeg Jets is going to be a huge tell for how healthy Michael Ferland actually is, because that's the other way that Jake gets in. But aside from that, I don't know. I would probably bet that we don't see Jake Virtanen in this Minnesota Wild playing series.
Man, it's frustrating.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, you go ahead, Anna.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Thanks so much. Yeah, just to talk a little bit more about Michael Ferland now you've started in on him, because I think you're right that we've seen as much as we can see, like from the scrimmage, from the practices, he looks up to speed, but we'll not be able to tell until we get him in that game situation. If all goes well and he is able to be completely game ready, what do you think he'll bring to the lineup?
Yeah, if he plays at all like he did on the Canucks last scrimmage there on the Friday night, he could be the best forward on the ice. He could be the most impactful playoff forward on the ice for the Vancouver Canucks. There was times where he would have to lay up a little bit and not land one of these huge hits that he was kind of famous for. I think back to earlier this year, I know it was on Colby Cave, who obviously the Oilers have been checking in on him, or obviously worried about him with the rest in peace to Colby Cave and the 12 that they have set up. But, that was a massive hit that Michael Ferland threw this year. And that's something that he does regularly. Even in the 14 games that he played, he averaged 3.5 hits per game. If he's able to look like that on a third line, running around and get physical contact and get involved, he can be a huge player for them in the playoffs. You don't have to tell Canucks fans that. They saw what he did in 2015. But I think that Michael Ferland also now, if he's healthy and he's playing good and he's on that power play unit, he's a guy that could move up into the top 6 if an injury occurs. And I think the Canucks fans are very lucky this year. Injuries didn't happen, but it's playoffs. It's coming back from a long break. We'll have to see. But Michael Furlan could be very impactful. He could seriously be an X factor playing on your third line. You see it in every single playoff run that a team does to the Stanley Cup Finals. There's one or two guys in a bottom six that just stands out for that team, and I think Michael Furlan has the potential to do that for the Vancouver Canucks.
So I don't want to put too much cold water on the Michael Furlan hype train, Chris, which I guess over the last few days has gotten out of control with Canuck fans getting excited about his return. But, we've seen a lot of talk over the last couple of days, especially about how if Michael Furlan can be the 2015 Michael Furlan that terrorized the Canucks, he can be an impactful player. And I don't disagree with that. But this is also a guy who, let's not forget, that series was 5 years ago, and Michael Furlan has had documented concussion problems over the last couple seasons. And even just going back to last season when he was playing for the Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Hurricanes, he wasn't averaging like 7 or 8 hits every game like he was in 2015. This is a guy who's getting 2 or 3 hits a game and hasn't ever really put up the offensive numbers you would want out of an energy player like Michael Furlan. So is it a matter of maybe curbing your enthusiasm just a little bit on Michael Furlan and acknowledging that you might not get that exact 2015 Michael Furlan in your lineup?
Yeah, and I think at the same time you can be excited because, like I mentioned earlier, if he's not able to do it, you got Jake Virtanen right there, right? Or you have Zach McEwen right there who can bring something similar. But you're right, Matt. Like, we're not going to see a 22-year-old Michael Furlan who was trying to make an impact and try and get his name known. And he did that. He did that incredibly well in that 2015 series. I don't think we're going to see a similar player. I think we're going to see a guy who's learned a little bit more about the NHL, might pick his spots a little bit better. He's not going to be willing to drop the gloves probably like he was when he was 22 years old. I think he's learned a lot since then. He's maybe not even just went out and learned by himself, but he's almost been forced to change his game, I think, a little bit just from the injuries that he's gone through. So I think he can be very impactful. Like the way that he was skating around guys in a scrimmage, like he was – Quinn Hughes looks to be the best player on the ice. He looks like he's improved somehow at skating, which is like crazy to think, but he looks like a better skater somehow. But I think aside from Quinn Hughes, Michael Furlan was the best player on the ice for the Vancouver Canucks in that scrimmage. And if he does that in an NHL game in this play-in series, if he looks like this at all against Winnipeg, throws a couple hits, gets us excited, and then brings that into the Minnesota Wild series, we're going to fall in love with this guy if he's able to play like that, because he's kind of everything the Canucks have needed in this lineup. We've talked about it for, how many years now, thinking like, oh, how are we going to have that player that kind of replaced what Alex Burrows was able to do, or something that, some of the guys, like, I don't know, the bottom 6 players seem to have a special spot in Canucks fans' hearts. And I think Michael Furlan really has the potential to do that if he can bring a little bit of physicality, because we don't really have that big hitting player on this team, but he's definitely our guy if he is going to be able to stay healthy and do that for the Canucks here.
Worth repeating that Ryan Kessler tells Sportsnet 650 today that he looked at Michael Furlan as a little bit like that Raffi Torres-like player for the Vancouver Canucks. And I mean, I think a lot of people talk about how underrated Raffi Torres was during that 2011 run. And I guess what we're hoping from Michael Furlan is not necessarily the same Raffi Torres, but at least shades of Raffi Torres, and bringing that similar type of game. Chris, just before we wrap up this segment, let's go through your game 1 lineup predictions. What are you seeing from the top of the roster to the bottom of it? You've been there through most of the entirety of training camp, so you've had a really good long look at which line combinations worked, which ones didn't, which ones were standing out in terms of winning a spot. For you, what does the game 1 lineup against Minnesota on Sunday look like?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a lot of surprises, honestly. I think that we're going to be told the final roster after we see this Winnipeg game. And, I don't have to tell you guys, I think everybody here is so excited to see a televised Canucks game, see what it looks like when they're skating at full speed. I can't stop smiling just talking about it. So I think what we're going to see is that top 6 is going to be what a lot of people predict. It's going to be JT Miller. It's going to be Elias Pettersson. It's going to be Tyler Toffoli. That line is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Then from there, it's going to be Tanner Pearson, Bo Horvat, and Brock Besser, which is a line that, if Brock looks good like he did in training camp and scrimmages, I'm really excited to see what that line can do. From there, I think it is going to be Antoine Roussel. I think it's going to be Adam Gaudette, and I think it's going to be Michael Furlan on that third line. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but that fourth line is going to be all penalty killers. They're not going to play a lot of 5-on-5, I don't think. It's going to be Tyler Mott, it's going to be Jay Beagle, and it's going to be Brandon Sutter if he's healthy. And if he's not healthy, I guess they're going to have to go with Louis Eriksson in that spot, honestly.
Does this mean you're going to wear that Louis Eriksson jersey that you have?
Guys,
He's got it.
Here.
Oh, yeah. Dig that beauty out. Oh,
Wow.
beautiful.
What was that?
She's
I think that was. I think you mentioned like you spent what was it, $20, $50 on that thing?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was something like $35 or something. It took 4 months to get here. It was coming from China, and COVID hit right when that happened. So it took a while to get here, but it was worth the wait. That is a absolutely gorgeous jersey. It sparkles in the light right now.
To each their own.
On the defense, I think there's probably even less surprises. Perhaps the only intrigue there is that bottom pairing Faber. So for all intents and purposes, who do you have playing in the third pairing for Vancouver?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Fantenberg and Troy Stetcher. Similar to what we're going to see with that fourth line, I don't think we're going to see a lot of either of those guys. I think Fantenberg's going to be replacing Quinn Hughes on the penalty kill. But aside from that, you're going to see a lot of that top four. You're going to see a lot of Tyler Myers. You're going to see a lot of Alex Edler. You're going to see a lot of Chris Tanev. And then, like I mentioned, I think the only time you're really going to see Fantenberg on special teams is he's going to replace Quinn Hughes in that spot. Troy Stetcher, I wouldn't be surprised if Troy Stetcher is playing 9 minutes a game. Like he's not on a special teams unit, right? He might be able to replace someone, but the two right shot guys on the penalty kill are going to be Myers and Tanev, and Stetcher doesn't really have a spot. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of him, even though a lot of Canucks fans would like to. But at the same time, Stetcher's in a good spot where if an injury does happen to a right shot guy, I think some Canucks fans are comfortable with him being an injury replacement for a top four. So maybe he'll be well rested when we do need him if an injury occurs. So, yeah, that's what I got for my bottom pair. I think maybe we see some Jordy Ben action if Fantenberg starts to slip a little bit, because we did see Fantenberg slip at times this year. He didn't really bring a lot to the team aside from that absolute snipe that he had on his one goal this year. But, yeah, I don't think we're going to be shocked at all. I think we're going to see – I'm just hoping everyone stays healthy for this Winnipeg game, and we can start to talk about lineups a little bit more when an injury occurs. But aside from that, I don't think there's going to be anything to shock anyone, really.
Obviously, the Jordy Ben will be bubble dependent and everything like that. But I think you're probably pretty right on that roster. Does it concern you at all that we'll be leaning so heavily on that top 9 and top 2 pairings, or because of that, you sort of see us Canucks not having too much trouble getting through Minnesota, that it's not too much of a concern?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting the longer the playoffs go on. I'm already looking at the second series. I'm pretty confident the Canucks are going to kick the Minnesota Wild's ass. I'm very comfortable saying that. But I think that, yeah, that top 9, like, they're going to be really challenged, I think, later on when they go against, a Colorado, a Vegas Golden Knights. But then again, that's when that fourth line is probably going to play in a different role. I think when that fourth line is actually going to be in somewhat of a matchup role. Right now with the Minnesota Wild, there isn't really – I mean, they have some solid lines, but I don't think that their lines are good enough for Travis Green to really say, like, okay, I need my Horvat line to go up against the McDavid line or the McKinnon line, like he's going to have to do with teams like that. But maybe that's why I don't think that fourth line is going to play at all. Like, they're barely going to play at 5-on-5. Why would you want to have them out there aside from, maybe giving a rest to the other top 9 that you have? Because they're going to be there to kill penalties. That's what they're going to be here to do. And the Canucks had a pretty good year against the Minnesota Wild killing penalties. They had one game where Minnesota was 0 for 5. One game Minnesota was 0 for 2. I believe they let in 2 power play goals in the third game that they played against them, and one right as the penalty expired. So they got whooped a little bit on the penalty kill in that one. But we'll see, because I don't think they're going to take 5 penalties like they did that one game earlier in January against the Minnesota Wild. But we'll see. Maybe it'll be more like 2 penalties a game. And then it's like, then the discussion comes up where, if you're going to make that fourth line be all about penalty killing and you're only killing 2 or 3 penalties a game, does Zach McEwen make a little bit more sense to play on that line instead of Brandon Sutter? Because then you're thinking that's going to bring a lot more at 5-on-5. You're going to see a lot more ice time at 5-on-5. Does McEwen make a little bit more sense than a guy like, Tyler Mott? Not as much. I like Tyler Mott on the fourth line, but I think Brandon Sutter, the argument's got to be there to say, is Zach McEwen more of an impact player at 5-on-5?
All right, well, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about those loose ends from training camp, and we're even going to have Chris discuss a player. I don't know if he'll admit he was wrong or not on this one, but a player who he was a little down on it, let's put it this way, in Juolevi. So that's coming up next here, C4 Podcast, CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
He liked to say the F word.
Oh, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't.
You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
Talking to Chris Faber of Canucks Conversation and Canucks Army. You can also follow him on Twitter, by the way, at Chris Faber39. Chris, what is the 39 from? Is it Dan Kluche?
So I was born in 93. That was my football number, and my baseball number was 39. But speaking of Dan Kluche, you see Mikey DiPietro out there. How great would it be if Mikey DiPietro went back to the old school Dan Kluche mask? That would be incredible. I think that's such a Mikey DiPietro thing to do. I think that would be so awesome for him to be a backup down the road for that. But no, not a big shout out to Dan Kluche. I grew up in the era of some of my first memories being the beach ball gifts. Some of the first gifts I ever saw were the beach ball going past Dan Kluche. So yeah, it's not a hat tip to him. But before we go any further, I know that Chris isn't here for this episode, but I got to mention something. So I went on a recent road trip to Kelowna. Went with my girlfriend. We did a nice little wine tour and stuff up there. And she was starting to pass out, so I turned the music off and I threw your guys' podcast on. It was the one where you guys had Dave on the show.
Nice.
And she wanted me to say thank you to Chris for his soothing voice. It helped her go to sleep. So that's not a jab at your guys' podcast, by the way. She's not a huge hockey fan, but it's more of a little props to Chris on his soothing voice to help put her to sleep.
He does have very soft, dulcet tones, doesn't he?
It might be his cold takes, though. Maybe that's what put her to sleep, too.
I'm not going to disagree there. Was he talking about the LTIR or the cap recapture with Roberto Luongo or something? It must have been something like that.
I think it must have been at the time.
The hill he will always die on.
Wow.
Chris, let's start the segment. I think what impressed me about your reporting style during Canucks training camp was how unique some of your questions were, and they were just such colorful questions that I'm assuming you sort of asked to sort of get some personality out of players. You even got a little bit of a chuckle from Quinn Hughes when you made that, I think it was the Ohio State power play comment, so you even got a little chuckle out of him. You've asked players like Pedersen and Jay Beagle about Gossip Girl, so I'm just sort of curious to hear about the methodology behind your questions and sort of what you've sort of been able to glean from getting those questions asked to those players.
Yeah, I think you go into these, and I'm from Canucks Army. It's a blog. That's what I'm doing there. I'm the last person to ask a question normally in these Zoom meetings. Most of the time, I don't get a question in. So what you kind of do in these Zoom meetings is you do this thing on Zoom, and I guess we could do it right now if we wanted to. But you hit raise hand. Maybe we don't have it as this event, but you raise hand, and then you say, I have a question for Travis. I have a question for Michael. Like whoever you're talking to, you kind of raise a question. Most of the time, I don't get them in. And if I do, all the great simple questions have been asked. So I have to try and mix things up a little bit. And I want to get a good quote out of somebody. I'm on Canucks Twitter as much as anybody else is. I know what people want to hear. So I try and lean a little bit that way. But the other thing that I try and think when I'm interviewing a player is like, you know what, this is just another, I'm a 27-year-old guy. A lot of these guys are 24, 27-year-old guys as well. Like, why not try and have a little bit of fun with it? And, even just making a little bit of a joke to Quinn Hughes. It was cool to see Drancer send out a tweet that he was impressed with, being able to disarm a player. And I was kind of thinking, I was like, yeah, I guess you could call that disarming, but like, I don't know, maybe you get a better question if you get a chuckle out of a guy, right? Like I feel like when you guys ask a funny question to me, I'll open up a little bit, even though I open up way too much on every question you ask. But aside from that, like it's, why not have fun with it? We're on Zoom. Like a year ago, if you told me I was asking Gossip Girl questions to Elias Pettersson over a Zoom call, I first would ask you what Zoom is, and then I would ask you what Gossip Girl is. But aside from that, it's been a lot of fun. And just the fact that, Canucks Army was included in 2 training camps this year, I think it's just pretty cool to see how far we've come as the blog. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
Have you sort of Go ahead, Anna.
Sorry. I was just going to say that I was impressed. I said this on Twitter to you already, but that's the most animated I've ever seen Quinn Hughes. He is just the chillest, guy ever. So anything that can surprise him is good. And I think anything that put players off balance, disarms them, or just makes them think is just a good thing. And I think the Michael Furland Zoom interview was a really great example of that. He came up with some really thoughtful responses. And I think sometimes it's asking the serious questions that they don't want to answer, or it's asking the silly ones. So yeah, I would say keep going with that for sure.
Yeah, thanks. With the Quinn one, I mean, like you're right. Like some of the questions you would hear asked to Jacob Markstrom, and he would just answer yes, no, and then he'd be done. And you're like, okay, like you don't want to ask a question that's going to be a yes or no answer. But I with the Quinn Hughes one and asking him about Ohio State, he actually made the first joke about Ohio State. I think it was like the first question. I was some NHL.com reporter who was on the call, and he was asking every single player to start these interviews, what's it going to be like playing in front of no fans? And Quinn made the first joke. It's like, well, it was kind of like last year playing in Ohio State. You know, they didn't really have a lot of fans anyways. And he does a little chuckle, and the NHL.com guy just has no idea that Quinn just made a joke. And I'm just thinking, like, well, Quinn made a joke. Like, Quinn actually tried to be funny for a reason. So, like, I better do something off of that. So I thought I'd come up with a little Ohio State thing for him. And, yeah, you mentioned it, Anna, on Twitter. I think that is the hardest I've seen Quinn laugh so far in an interview. So I'm pretty proud of that moment for sure.
I think the one takeaway that we can get from all this is that, like, at the end of the day, players are people too. And, like, we're going to get those same hockey jargon kind of filled answers all the time from players. And, you know, sure, it's like the kind of clips you want to play on sports radio and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, here we are. We've just spent a 10-minute conversation talking about Quinn Hughes actually getting a laugh out of your question. I think it's kind of cool to have that kind of colorful moment in hockey. And it's something that I think Botchford really himself tried to do with the Provies before and then the Athletics as well, is that he was always trying to get the color out of players because it was just like there's so much more untapped potential from players that we just don't know about from a journalism perspective. So I think it was really cool that you're asking these kind of questions and putting your own sort of spin on them. So I think it's really cool to see. And like, I'll echo what Anna says. I'm just saying, keep it up, I guess, for the next couple of years. Chris, let's get onto the other good stuff that I want to talk about. And, you know, this was a player who Quads talked about last time he was on. It really brought me down listening to you guys and reading your work, the deep dive on Juolevi. You know, I went from a guy who thought Juolevi could be a very safe and dependable top 4 guy to thinking maybe this guy's going to be lucky to be in the NHL after reading your 2-part series on Juolevi. You know, I'm not going to say that you were wrong on Juolevi, but I think we would both agree that he looked a lot better in this training camp than he did in the last training camp. So I want to start this segment by asking, where do you currently stand on Juolevi's sort of development as a professional hockey player?
Yeah, I think with Juolevi, you're right. The negatives article that I wrote definitely didn't. A lot of the things I talked about in that article were things that he improved on a couple of them. But I'll get back to that in a couple minutes here, because yeah, he did look a lot better than we've seen in a lot of this year. But he also looked a lot there. He looked very similar to what he did when he returned from that 1-month break this year in Utica. I mean, you saw the numbers probably in that article that Juolevi did after coming back from that month of absence that he took from the injury. He was incredible. His Corsi was ridiculous through the roof. He was skating well. And that's something that we like to see at Juolevi. But his knees and hips kind of wore on him as the season went on, and he started to, you know, fall back to not being a strong skater. So this time off was excellent for Juolevi. He was able to get back into, you know, 100% game shape. The only thing that scares me a little bit, and this kind of just came because this is something that we saw, like I mentioned, when he came back from that 1-month absence of being able to rehab for a full month. He came back and looked healthy. You know, he wasn't healthy at the start of the year. He wasn't healthy at first training camp. But when he gets a break and he's able to kind of give his knee and hip and whatever other parts of bodies are hurting him, you know, a little bit of a break, he looks great. And he was skating better than I've seen him skate all year. Every single game that I've ever seen Juolevi play in, some of the stuff that I saw at training camp, I thought was the best skating he ever did. But he improved on the stuff that I wrote in those 2 articles. He improved on all the positives. Like, he looked better at skating. He looked better at passing. He looked better at certain other things that I kind of like about Juolevi's game. But the things that a lot of people were talking about, you know, him being able to defend guys in the corner, those were something that I kind of wrote in the positives too. Like, he's solid at defending there. But the thing that I didn't see him improve, and I didn't see any reporters talk about, was, is Juolevi better now at 2-on-1s? Is he better at defending 2-on-1s? Is he not getting walked by guys in certain situations? So he improved, but he improved on the stuff that he was already getting positive reaction from. And I don't think he improved on a lot of stuff that I wrote in that negative article about. I mean, I saw him make a lot of bad passes still, where he didn't make a guy, you know, he just would quickly make a snap decision and move the puck, but it wasn't a pass. It was just him moving the puck. So there was times where he made some great passes for sure. And he had a solid camp, but overall, like, a lot of the videos that I was sending out were ones that were pumping him for sure. You see a lot of other people with the highlights. You didn't see a lot of the lowlights of Juolevi, but there definitely were some still throughout camp. So I wouldn't be 100% sold right now, but it's definitely it's definitely a step in the right direction for Ole Juolevi.
Are we going to see him at all in the games?
Yeah, I don't know. I coming into camp, I thought that Brisebois and Sautner would be ahead of him in the depth chart. So he's done enough in this training camp to be ahead of both those guys. Are we going to see injuries? Are we going to see guys go down to COVID? What are we going to see here? If we get later in, I don't think we're going to see him in the Minnesota one. I think that, having Jordy Ben there is a good option for a guy to move in on your left side. I don't think they'll lose 2 defensemen in a 5-game series, especially on the left side. But the Vancouver Canucks, so maybe we will. But, I think that if we start to go later on, maybe we do see Ole Juolevi, which kind of shocked me a little bit because Travis Green's a guy who likes NHL veterans. Ashton Sautner's played in 23 NHL games in his career. That's an average of 7 over the past 3 years. Brisebois has played in, I think, 7 or 8 NHL games in the 1 year that he was able to play in. So, that's another guy. Then you look at Jalen Chatfield, 0 NHL games. He's on this team right now. Ole Juolevi, 0 NHL games. He's on this team right now. So maybe Travis Green did take a lot more out of training camp than I think a lot of people thought that he would, because Travis Green doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's going to play a guy with 0 NHL games. In Travis Green's rookie playoff experience now, this time he's gone to the playoffs as an NHL coach. I thought he would go with the veterans, so it did surprise me a little bit. I don't think we'll see Ole Juolevi in Minnesota, but maybe, in the first round of the playoffs, I guess if you want to call it that, or the second round, maybe injuries force him in, and that will be very interesting. If he's trying to defend NHL talent when they're coming down on the rush, I still think that's a weak part of Ole Juolevi's game. I need to see him prove me wrong on that. And with the scrimmages and practices, it just didn't give me enough of a sample size to flip-flop my mind on that, because I saw him get beat at the AHL level a lot. But he looks healthy, and I think that's the best thing. That's what everybody wanted, right? As long as we could see Ole Juolevi healthy, that's what we want. And right now, that's what we got to see at training camp. So it's definitely some positives and some good steps in the right direction.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there with Juolevi, that on the tangible, sort of measurable stuff like skating, he's, taken a step forward. But stuff like hockey sense and decision-making ability, that's definitely a larger cause for concern if you can't get that right. But it may be that he's just catching up to NHL speed on that. And yeah, I wonder if Jalen Chatfield, as you say, not an NHL experienced guy, but he has been around the team a lot, had a lot of call-ups. So I wonder if Travis is just making a more, not mentoring, but learning experience for them in terms of the future. But yeah, what are your thoughts on what he sees in those two?
Yeah, I think Brogan Rafferty is by far the best defenseman out of that group. I think Brogan Rafferty is the best left side defenseman. I think he's a better option than Ole Juolevi is. Rafferty didn't really have to do a lot of that in the AHL this year. He also didn't have a great camp either, so there is a lot of recency bias looking at Ole Juolevi. But it's crazy how quickly we forgot that Brogan Rafferty was an AHL All-Star. He was the second leading scorer in points at a defenseman. He's sound defensively. I mean, you look Canucks Twitter is one thing. It's a massive thing with a lot of people. I'm also a little bit in the Comets Twitter now, and, interacting with these people, they're just saying wow, we're not talking about Rafferty a lot right now. He was incredible for this Utica Comets team. He moves the puck. He plays defense well. There was a couple bad clips of him that kind of circulated throughout this past 2 weeks on training camp. There was one time where Brock Besser just leaned into him, and it looked like a LaDainian Tomlinson stiff arm. He just absolutely unloaded on him. And I think that, that's not great for Brogan Rafferty, but I still think Brogan Rafferty is the best option after Jordy Ben. I think on either side too. I know that Travis Green's probably not going to go that way, but maybe he does. If he needs a left shot guy and he looks and he has Brogan Rafferty and he has Ole Juolevi. I know Rafferty only has 2 games in the NHL, those 2 games that he played after he signed a couple of years ago in the 18-19 season. But this guy also was an AHL All-Star. He's a guy who can play the game well. If Travis knows it all that he can play on the left side, as he did, Brogan Rafferty, his whole NCAA career playing on the left side. So I think that he's a better option still. But I wouldn't be shocked, if down the road we see them, because it's 2 defensive injuries to the left side, then maybe we do see Ole Juolevi. But as for Jalen Chatfield, solid defensive guy. I mean, he's pretty much a way worse version of Chris Tanev. Probably a little bit tougher. He'll drop the gloves, but that's all he's going to do. He's not going to bring you much offense at all. He's not going to get shots on net that are effective like Ole Juolevi will. So yeah, Jalen Chatfield's there. He's probably the last option, I think, out of the 10 defensemen that did go with the Vancouver Canucks.
All right. Those are the last of the training camp thoughts from Chris Faber here. I think coming up in the next segment, We'll talk about the series predictions. You already heard it boldly from him once on this podcast, and you've seen it from him on Twitter at least, I think, a couple times as well. Chris Faber is calling his shot, saying the Vancouver Canucks will sweep the Minnesota Wild. We'll get into that very bold, spicy take coming up next here on the C4 podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time, and yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
So I'm not going to lie, Chris. When I saw the tweet saying something along the lines of the Vancouver Canucks are going to sweep the Minnesota Wild, I thought to myself, that's a ballsy take. 4 months off of professional hockey, a lot of unknowns. Yeah, the Canucks had a pretty good training camp, but they were playing each other. You just don't know. So I think anytime you boldly state that the Vancouver Canucks, of all teams, will sweep the Minnesota Wild, it's a pretty bold take. So I want to get your thoughts on what led you to this conclusion and why you think it's a good bet.
Well, I think that maybe later on in the playoffs, we're going to see the Canucks be matched with their top six and then outmatched with their depth. Right now, they're outmatched with their depth a little bit, you could say. Maybe that third line is a little bit outmatched from what you're going to see from a balanced Minnesota Wild team. But this Vancouver Canucks team is about to bring one of the best lines in hockey with JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, and Tyler Toffoli together as their first line. That line that they're going to put together in Minnesota, if you look at Russo, he's a guy that I follow for a lot of my Minnesota Wild stuff. They've had different lines like every single practice throughout training camp. They're not putting together a line that's great. The only one that's kind of sticking together is the Eriksson Ek line. That seems to be the one that they're going to go with to shut down Elias Pettersson. And I'm sorry, but Joel Eriksson Ek, he's had great numbers. His expected goals against is pretty high, or pretty good. I think I had it in front of me just a couple of minutes ago. Yeah, it's like 1.76. That's a pretty good expected goals against per 60. But Elias Pettersson's goals per 60 this year was over 4. He's going to be a player that, Eriksson Ek can't stop. I think that we're going to see that top line be too much for what the top defensive line for the Minnesota Wild is going to be. And then you look at what that second unit's going to do. Tanner Pearson, Bo Horvat, and Brock Besser are going to have a pretty easy matchup. And that's going to be nice to see for Bo Horvat because he's been a guy who's had the toughest matchup throughout the whole season in every single game that the Canucks have played in. And now he gets to go out there and play Bo Horvat's playoff-style game. And I'm just really excited to see what Horvat does. I think he's going to step up in that situation. The third line right now, I know that a lot of people are saying that the depth's going to be better for the Minnesota Wild. I don't believe it. If Michael Furlan's going to be an impact player, that line's going to be something that I'm going to love to watch. Antoine Roussel's the only one that worries me on that line. But it's also great for him because his knee is now healthy. We thought a little bit when the season was winding down. His knee wasn't 100%. He had a great start when he was going up in that Alex Burrows night in his first game back. But now you're going to see that third line be very effective. The fourth line, they're going to kill penalties. I've talked about it this whole podcast with you guys. Not really expecting much from them at 5-on-5. But the only thing that worries me is that defense for Minnesota. But I just don't see them being able to stop the Canucks top six. I think the Canucks top six is too good. And right now I'm already weighing it out. To me, just talking about what I've talked about with the forwards and the defense, I give the Vancouver Canucks the advantage here. And then I haven't even talked about the goaltending, which might be the biggest advantage for the Vancouver Canucks in this series.
So on the topic of goaltending, and we haven't talked too much about it on this episode, the reality is, Chris, we are still 4 months away removed from Jacob Markstrom's last NHL game. Yeah, he was named the team MVP and everything, but have you seen enough from training camp to be, at least fairly certain that we're going to get the Jacob Markstrom that was playing in March?
I think Jacob Markstrom let in 3 goals in 3 scrimmages, 3 complete scrimmages. That's pretty damn good for a scrimmage. You're not going to be playing a strong defense in a scrimmage. We saw no big hits. Saw people laying off a little bit defensively. Jacob Markstrom's looked excellent. He was a guy that was able to get ice when he was over in Sweden. I think that he's been able to stay at the top of his game. He was able to go back and see his family too, right? I think that's so important for him in the situation that he's kind of dealt with. Going back to your family for a few months and being able to, have hockey in the back of your mind, but have family and your mental state at the front of your mind is so great for Jacob Markstrom. I think he's going to step right in. I think that if you look at a lot of these goalies coming back, I think Jacob Markstrom is going to still be one of the top three in the NHL, specifically in these 24 teams that are going into a play-in or playoff series. So I'm not worried about Jacob Markstrom at all. I'm worried about what the hell the situation is over there in Minnesota. I don't even know if they've named a starter yet. I really hope it's Dubnyk, because you look at his numbers, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that he's going to be able to keep up with Jacob Markstrom. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, I give an advantage to the Canucks in the player department. I give an advantage to them vastly in the goaltending department as well. So aside from the top four, which it's hard for me to argue and say the Canucks top four is better, but you're still getting a healthy Alex Edler. You're getting a healthy Chris Tanev. You're getting a Quinn Hughes, who I mentioned a little bit earlier. Like, I don't know, guys. It freaked me out seeing Quinn Hughes skate around the ice, because I was like, I did not think he could be a better skater, but he looked ridiculous in scrimmage. The spin moves, maybe I just haven't seen one in a long time, but like seeing a Quinn Hughes spin move again, like I can't wait for this televised game on Wednesday, because Canucks Twitter is going to be blowing up talking about the spin moves that we haven't seen in forever.
Is there anyone that makes you nervous, either on the Wild or a weak link on the Canucks? Is there a particular strength on the Wild and weakness on the Canucks that concerns you?
Yeah, I think the defense, the top three defensemen for Minnesota, like I really like Dumba, I really like Suter, and I really like Spurgeon. I think Spurgeon's going to be good in this series. Brad Hunt, the defenseman for them, had a couple of really good games against Vancouver Canucks this year. Kevin Fiala scored 2 goals over Jacob Markstrom's glove side this year. His 2 goals that he scored against the Vancouver Canucks. I'm going to bet that Jacob Markstrom has watched those 2 goals probably 100 times now. He's going to know that Fiala is going to shoot over his glove side, and I can't wait for Markstrom to make that glove save, because it's going to be something I can't wait to tweet about. I'm worried a little bit about them having a few veterans who have been able to, probably play more playoff games. But I'm not sure how many Stanley Cup winners they have on their team, if that's going to be something that's so important every year. I mean, the Canucks have probably – I'm just gonna guess. Like, I'm looking at their lineup right now. I don't see Stanley Cup winners sticking out right now. But the Canucks have, a Tanner Pearson, a Tyler Toffoli, Jay Beagle. I mean, Alex Edler's been to a Stanley Cup final. Like, I think that the veteran group that they're saying might be leaning in Minnesota's favor. I think that the Stanley Cup group might be stronger on the Vancouver Canucks side as well. So the young core is better. The older core might be a little bit better. The middle core might be a little bit better. I'm not worried about the Minnesota Wild. This is going to look really bad if they lose, but I'm not worried at all. I think they're going to sweep the Minnesota Wild in the playoff series.
I'm curious, and you touched on this one, Faber, as well. If you had pick between the two, which sort of really excites you more? Is it the fact that we have a fully healthy Alex Edler and Chris Tanev, I think, which speaks a lot of volumes, and it doesn't get enough love here? Or is it the fact that Quinn Hughes somehow looks better now than he did earlier this season? I think both of those are very huge things which are not getting enough attention right now going into the play-in series.
You're right. And I've got to get to 20 articles a month for Canucks Army, so I think I might have to write that when we finish this interview. But you're right. I mean, I think Quinn Hughes getting better excites everyone, right? I mean, Quinn Hughes was playing ridiculous numbers at some point in the season, some games over 30 minutes for Travis Green. I don't think we're going to see that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Quinn playing 26, 27 minutes. That's a lot of time that we're going to see him on the ice. I think he's got the body type for it. He's young. He's ready to play that game without the crowd noise kind of influencing the Minnesota Wild to be able to consistently be physical with Quinn Hughes. I think that might help him as well. They're not going to have the extra boost that you have maybe from a crowd when you lay a hit on Quinn Hughes. It's going to be quiet. It's going to be dead quiet. You lay a hit on Quinn Hughes, the Canucks are going to see that, and then they're going to be coming at you. It's not going to be the huge crowd reaction that we've had before. That's something that Tony Gallagher talked about when he was on my show a little bit, and I've been running with that for a while now. But, I think that the Chris Tanev and Alex Edler being healthy, that was a great pairing. I mean, not that pairing specifically, but the Tyler Myers and Alex Edler pairing earlier this year, they looked pretty damn good at the start of the year when they were both healthy. And I think that could be good for the Vancouver Canucks as long as Chris Tanev is okay with Quinn Hughes, and I think that there should be no problem with them. I think that that's going to be an effective top four, and I think that though everybody and their dog says that Minnesota has a better top four, I don't think it's going to be the difference maker in the series to get the Wild the win. I just don't think it's that big of it is a big difference, but it's not that big where it's going to be like, this is why they won. This is why they won the series, because their top four is that much better than the Vancouver Canucks, because a healthy Edler and a healthy Tanev mean a lot more. And you're right, Matt. Not a lot of people have been talking about that right now.
Excuse me while I put down this bet. Canucks to sweep the Wild. Just
I got to.
Let me put down this.
I guess.
Yeah, let me put this other one down. Pedersen to lead the play-in round in scoring. 30-1 odds. Okay. Anyway, where were we? Before we wrap things up, Chris, I wanted to get your thoughts on the other big news that hit the West Coast last week. Seattle Kraken obviously coming down. What was your sort of take on the whole thing? What do you think of the name, the logo? Let's get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think I love the name. Let's Get Kraken sounds great. Kraken Rum as a sponsor. Something on the power play about Let's Get It Kraken is awesome for them. I liked the logos. I didn't love the logos. I think that a different color scheme might have been a little bit better. Like, I don't mind the blue, but I think that I really wish they kind of went with a green. Like, I think that that's a Seattle thing to do. I know that a lot of people were leaning towards the name Emeralds for a while, but I think Kraken's the right decision. I just think that, like a lime green would have fit. It would have really popped in the NHL in a league where you don't really have a lime green team sticking out. Maybe not lime green. That sounds a little bit too much, but I think finding the right green and blue mix would have been a lot of fun, especially kind of counterparting the Vancouver Canucks a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of love the color scheme. I see they kind of leaned more to the Mariners side of things rather than Seahawks, which in my mind looks better. Like, I kind of loathe the Seahawks aesthetic. But yeah, for me, the logo was the issue too. Like, I love the name, love the color scheme, but the logo was just a little simple. I kind of said on Twitter that it looks like those S's that you used to doodle in class. But maybe that's just me, but yeah, it just seemed a little simple on the logo front.
I couldn't stop seeing, I don't know if you guys know, Trogdor the Burninator. I tweeted out that picture the other day, but the people who get this know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I'm curious from a Vancouver perspective, like, I was having this discussion with some friends earlier today, Chris. We're going to live in a world where one day fans will get to be back into the arenas, and, the Seattle Kraken will soon be playing in Vancouver. I'm curious, do you see a scenario where the Seattle Kraken, that 2-hour drive away from Vancouver, though, that they're sort of taking fans from the Vancouver market and converting them into Seattle Kraken fans? Because, like, let's be honest here, the Vancouver fan base has not always been a devout and diehard type of fan base. It can often be a bit of a fair weather bandwagon type of fan base. Maybe there are also some fans that are willing to just make the jump to the Kraken just because they want to cheer for the other side in Vancouver. Do you foresee that kind of situation playing out in Vancouver where the Kraken are taking that small percentage of Vancouver fans away and making them diehard Kraken fans?
I think that maybe 10 years from now we see that, because I remember being, in like a grade 1 and grade 2, and there was always those 2 or 3 kids in the class that were, at my time, because it was cool to be different. The easiest option for those kids to not be Seattle Kraken fan because they're close. It's against what the norm is, as a lot of people. So I think that we will see it down the road. I don't know if we're going to see an immediate reaction that we're going to see a lot of Kraken fans in Vancouver. I'll be interested to see, because like the Vegas Knights fans kind of shocked me too. I didn't think that Vegas was going to be that nuts for hockey. I think Seattle probably has a little bit more of a hockey. Well, I definitely know they have more of a hockey history than Las Vegas does for sure. So I think that we're going to see a lot of fans come out of Seattle. I don't know if it's going to turn a lot of Canucks fans. If you've been on the Canucks fan bandwagon for this long, I think 2011 still holds deeply in a lot of Canucks fans' hearts, and I think it's still too early to let go of that. But like I said, 10 years from now, I think the kids that are in grade 1, 2, and 3 right now, who are just starting to pick their favorite teams for sports, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these kids are picking the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, fair enough. But at least the Vancouver fans right now, they'll have the sweep of the Minnesota Wild that will probably keep them in the fan base for a little while longer. So
we'll be talking about the 2020 sweep for years now.
Most likely. Anna, as we wrap things up here on the C4 podcast, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, just thank you so much for coming on again, Faber. I hope it was a little more comfortable for you. There wasn't the hot box this time, but it was the hottest day of the year. So there is something about the C4 podcast. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing, and you're going from strength to strength. So, and keeping the good content out there on your platform.
I will say, like, Chris, we subscribe to The Athletic here on the C4 podcast, but like the stuff that you guys are writing, you and Quads on Canucks Army, is very quickly becoming almost must-read content, just like The Athletic. So in a time where it's really exciting to be a Canucks fan as you head into the playoffs, it's I would encourage people, if they haven't done it already, to keep checking your guys' stuff out on CanucksArmy.com, because you guys are really branding Canucks Army to be a really must-read platform for Canucks fans. So especially as we see the play-in series is resuming, I think it's going to be even more must-read content, because I know you're going to be, getting more and more guests in Canucks Conversation. You're going to be, putting a lot of analysis out throughout the play-in series as well. Anything on that you really want to promote out there for us before we let you go?
Yeah, just kind of what you mentioned. Keep shouting out Canucks Army. I don't really think I've announced it yet, but it'll be coming out in the next couple days here that I did get promoted at Canucks Army to a senior contributor, which is awesome. So you can expect 20 articles a month from me, which is going to be a lot. So you may have noticed, I think if you go on Canucks Army right now, the last 7 articles are mine, because I think I'm not close to 20 right now. So I'm banging out like 4 articles a day at this point to finish out this month. So yeah, I'm very excited to move into that role. The guys at Nation Network, who are our bosses at Canucks Army, have been really happy with what Dave has been able to do since becoming the managing editor. And I'm just trying to be Dave's right-hand man for a lot of the stuff at Canucks Army. So it's been a lot of fun, and yeah, just keep liking and keep sharing those articles, because like you mentioned earlier, I quit my job at the mill. This is my full income now. So retweet all those damn articles, please.
All right. Well, a reminder to those who are listening here on the C4 podcast, you can follow us on Twitter at the C4 podcast. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/the C4 podcast. On the web, c4podcast.com, and on Discord, bit.ly/C4 Discord in all caps. Make sure you check us out in Discord. You might even see Chris Faber there once in a while as we see the play-in series resuming for the Vancouver Canucks. Chris, it was a pleasure to have you once again. I cannot believe we are here finally at the end of July, and we are on the very precipice of real meaningful hockey. It's been such a long wait for all the hockey fans here, especially the Canucks fans. Almost 5 months, if you can believe. Like, that's longer than the off season for a lot of people. So let's put it into perspective. We are thirsty for hockey, and it's going to be great to see the Vancouver Canucks, as you have said, and I'm going to hold you to this, sweep the Minnesota Wild. So if they don't, you can follow Chris Faber at Chris Faber 39 to hold him accountable.
Most definitely. Hey, next time you guys are talking about a 1-0 lead for the Vancouver Canucks in their play-in series. So
all right,
that'll be a good episode.
I was going to say, we're going to be here next week after game 1. If, hopefully it doesn't happen, if Minnesota wins, we'll be talking about how we didn't have that Chris Faber guy on the last episode. That episode never happened. We did not say that there was ever going to be a sweep. All right, well, that's going to do it for us here on the C4 podcast. A reminder that you can check him out at Chris Faber 39 on Twitter, and make sure you subscribe to his podcast, Canucks Conversation. Check him out on Canucks Army. Well, that said, we're out.